The search for the self begins within. There is a kind of forgetting that doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly in the routines, the noise, the expectations we absorb, in the constant scrolling, the endless doing, the pressure to become someone. But not necessarily yourself. You were not born disconnected. You came into the world whole, curious, intuitive, alive, but somewhere along the way you were taught to look outward, to seek approval, to define your worth by productivity, perfection, or praise. And so you built a self based on survival, a mask that could be accepted, a version of you the world would applaud. But beneath the applause you feel it, the aching sense that something is missing, that something essential has gone quiet inside you. That something is yourself. Jung wrote, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And that's the truth we resist, because looking inside requires stillness, silence, and the courage to face what we've buried. Modern life does not support this kind of courage. It keeps us distracted on purpose, busy, efficient, exhausted, always moving, rarely present. We are so conditioned to chase the next thing that we forget to ask the most important question: who am I, really? We confuse personality with soul. We confuse roles with identity. We confuse noise with meaning. But the self, the truest, deepest, eternal self, cannot be found in titles or trends. It cannot be bought or built or borrowed. It can only be remembered, and to remember it, you must go against the grain of the world. You must sit with your discomfort. You must make peace with silence. You must question the life you've been living, not because it's bad, but because it may not be yours. Jung believed that the journey of a lifetime is the journey inward, not to become someone new, but to reclaim who you already are beneath the conditioning, beneath the roles, beneath the fear. That journey won't be rewarded by society, but it will awaken your soul, and once the self begins to stir, you will no longer be content with surface living. You were not born to be numb. You were not born to be distracted. You were born to awaken. And that awakening begins, not with achievement, not with approval, but with the quiet, daring act of turning within. Because the self you seek is already here. It always has been. You've just been looking in the wrong direction. The persona, the mask you mistake for you, there is a version of you the world knows. The polite smile, the measured voice, the curated presence. It's the you that fits into rooms without causing waves. The you that knows what's expected and delivers. Jung called this, the persona, a mask we wear to meet the demands of society. It is not false, but it is not the whole truth either. It is the part of you that knows how to play the game. How to survive, how to belong. We all need a persona. It helps us function in the world. But problems arise when we forget that we're wearing a mask, when we start to believe that the persona is all we are. You become what others need, what the moment requires, what the culture rewards, and little by little the voice of your deeper self, the one that whispers in silence, grows faint. You start performing instead of living. You say yes when your soul says no. You smile when you're tired. You nod when you're breaking inside. You become loved for a version of you that isn't quite real, and that love feels hollow because deep down you know, they don't really see me. How could they? I barely see myself. This is how the social self hides the true self, not out of malice, but out of fear of rejection, judgment, failure, or loneliness. We wear the mask to protect ourselves. But over time it becomes a prison, and here's the paradox. The more you hide your true self, the more unseen you feel. The more you perform, the more disconnected you become, until one day you wake up and wonder, who am I? Beneath all this, the journey back to the self begins with the courage to remove the mask, to admit that the smile isn't always real, that the life you built might not be the life you want, that fitting in is not the same as belonging. You are not your persona. You are not your resume, your reputation, your reflection. You are not the role you play at work or the identity you hold in your family. You are something deeper, wilder, truer. And though the world may not always welcome that truth, your soul longs for it. It aches to be known, not as a projection, but as you truly are. To begin again, you must gently take off the mask. You must risk being misunderstood. You must risk being real, because authenticity is not about being perfect. It's about being whole, and you cannot be whole while pretending. You don't have to throw away the persona. You just have to remember, it's a tool, not your truth. A costume, not your core. The true self is waiting behind the mask, and it is more beautiful, more powerful, and more worthy of love than anything the persona ever pretended to be. The shadow, your hidden power and pain inside you, lives a mirror you rarely dare to face. Not because it lies, but because it reflects the parts of you that were once labeled too much, too strange, too intense. So you pushed them down, buried them deep, and called it maturity. But what you repressed did not disappear. It became the shadow, Carl Jung said. The shadow is that hidden, repressed part of the personality that the conscious ego does not identify in itself. It is not evil, it is not your enemy. It is simply the you that had no place to go, the rage, the envy, the lust, the ambition, the sorrow, the wild creativity, all the feelings you were told to silence. You were taught to be nice, not honest, to be agreeable, not assertive, to be likable, not real, and so your shadow grew not as a monster, but as a container of unlived life. What you suppress becomes what controls you, not in the light of day, but in the quiet sabotage of your decisions, in the dreams that haunt you, in the outbursts you can't explain, in the relationships you ruin, in the fears that feel irrational but run your life, until one day you realize you're not just hiding from the world. You're hiding from yourself, and it hurts, but here's the deeper truth: your shadow is not just pain. It holds your power. The fire you feel in anger is the same energy that fuels courage. The envy you suppress can guide you toward your hidden desires. The shame you carry might be the voice of your truth trying to break through. What you hide is what you must heal, and what you heal only the heart can understand. Active imagination entering the inner world, there is a deeper world inside you, not made of logic, but of images. Not shaped by reason, but by emotion, instinct, and ancient memory. It waits patiently, this inner world, watching as you chase meaning in the outer one. But Jung believed true clarity, true integration, comes not from escaping reality, but from entering the world within. This is the path of active imagination, not fantasy, not daydream, but a conscious descent into the unconscious to meet what is hidden, to listen to the forgotten, to speak with the parts of you that have never been allowed a voice. In dreams the unconscious speaks to you, but in active imagination you speak back. Jung would sit quietly, eyes closed or turned inward, and follow an image, a symbol from a dream, a figure from the unconscious, and he would enter a dialogue. He did not analyze, he did not judge, he allowed the imagination to unfold, as if crossing into a sacred land, where emotion has form and thought becomes image. You may meet a child who lives in your silence, or an animal who carries your instinct, or a wise figure who knows what your conscious mind has forgotten. These figures are not hallucinations. They are aspects of you, alive in the psyche, waiting to be integrated. This is not pretending. This is remembering that your soul speaks in symbols, and your healing lies not in suppression, but in engagement. Through active imagination, the unconscious is no longer a mystery. It becomes a conversation, a relationship, a living field of insight. You draw the image, you write the dialogue, you sit with the feelings that arise, and over time a pattern forms. You begin to see yourself more clearly, not just the you the world sees, but the whole you. The shadow and the light, the lost and the longing, the wise and the wounded, and clarity does not arrive like lightning. It unfolds like a flower from root to bloom, because Jung knew healing is not a concept. It is a process, an unfolding of the self, layer by sacred layer. To practice active imagination is to say, I am willing to see, I am willing to feel, I am willing to meet myself fully, and in that willingness something incredible happens. The symbols begin to change, the figures grow stronger, more integrated, and so do you. You become less fragmented, more centered, less ruled by fear, more guided by soul. The answers you seek will not be found outside. They wait in the quiet depths within, not in words but in symbols, not in facts but in images. And when you learn to see again, to feel again, to imagine with your whole being, you will not just understand your life, you will reclaim it. Projection, seeing yourself in others, there are parts of you you cannot yet face, so the psyche finds a way to bring them into your awareness, not by whispering them directly, but by reflecting them through others. This is projection, one of the psyche's most brilliant and most painful mirrors. Carl Jung wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What you cannot see in yourself, you see everywhere in your lovers, your friends, your enemies, your idol. The traits that trigger you, and the traits that captivate you, they are both reflections. When someone angers you, ask, what wound are they touching? When someone fascinates you, ask, what part of me longs to be like that? We project both shadow and light. Our suppressed rage finds a home in someone else's temper. Our buried envy cloaks itself in criticism. Our disowned desire hides behind moral judgment, but also our forgotten creativity appears in the artist we admire. Our unlived courage shines in the rebel we fear. Our unclaimed divinity glows in the mentor we follow. You think you are seeing them, but you are also seeing you. Your reactions, especially the intense ones, are not random. They are clues. Each obsession, each irritation, each emotional charge is an invitation to look inward. The person you love too much, they may carry your unloved self, the one you can't stop judging. They may carry the freedom you were taught to suppress. The one you idolize, they may embody the power you have yet to claim. Projection is how the unconscious makes itself known, not to punish you, but to awaken you. And here is the paradox. Until you reclaim your projections, you remain bound to them. You will keep attracting the same kind of people, keep falling into the same emotional loops, keep misunderstanding others because you have misunderstood yourself. To withdraw your projections is not to stop feeling. It is to feel consciously, to say, this emotion is mine, this judgment is mine, this desire is mine, and in that moment you take your power back. You no longer need the world to carry what you have abandoned. You carry it yourself, you integrate it, you become more whole. The world becomes less triggering, less mystical, less heavy because you've stopped scattering your soul across it. And now you can truly see others, not as mirrors but as beings. You see the divine in them because you've found it in you. The role of suffering in self-discovery, suffering is not the enemy, it is the awakening. Though the ego begs for comfort, the soul calls for depth, and depth is rarely found in ease. Carl Jung knew this well. He wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Because what we call pain, grief, betrayal, heartbreak, failure is often the breaking open of who we thought we were. So that we can remember who we truly are, we try to avoid it, we numb it with distractions, deny it with logic, or hide it behind a mask. But suffering will wait, not to punish but to reveal. The ego resists anything that threatens its identity. It clings to roles, routines, illusions of control. But suffering dissolves those walls. Suddenly the mask cracks. The career ends, the relationship falls apart, the health fails, the dream shatters, and in that sacred wreckage we are forced to stop. We are left with questions that can't be answered by Google or gurus. Who am I without them? What is my worth without success? What do I truly want? This is the crucible of transformation. Pain strips away pretense. It tears the surface to show the root. It reveals the fragile scaffolding of our lives and invites us to build something real. Not everyone accepts this invitation. Some grow bitter, smaller, hardened, but others let the wound teach them, because the wound is not just a place of injury, it is the birthplace of wisdom. Through pain, you remember parts of yourself you never knew existed: your resilience, your depth, your intuition, your courage. You discover that your heart is not just breakable, it is expandable. You learn that surrender is not weakness, it is a door. And grief, when honored, becomes grace. The most beautiful souls are not those who avoided suffering, but those who transmuted it. They carry light in their eyes not because they never knew darkness, but because they refused to be consumed by it. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To become who you truly are, you must pass through the fire. You must sit with the sorrow. You must listen to the ache in your bones that says, 'This is not the end, this is the beginning.' So when pain arrives, pause, don't run, don't rush to fix it, listen. It may be your soul trying to speak through the silence. Not to destroy you, but to deliver you back to yourself. Individuation, the journey to wholeness. You were never meant to stay fragmented. You were born with many pieces, but the soul longs for unity." Carl Jung called this path individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole, not perfect, not someone else, but entirely, courageously, authentically you. It is not a goal to be achieved, it is a journey to be walked again and again through the forests of confusion, the valleys of shadow, the mountains of awakening. Individuation asks, what parts of yourself have you silenced to belong? What truths have you buried to feel loved? What fragments have you cast into the unconscious because the world told you they were too strange, too intense, too much? This path calls you to retrieve them. To reclaim your shadow, not as your shame but as your strength. To face your inner child, not as a weakness but as your wonder. To dialogue with your anima, your animus, your wild instincts, your divine intuition, and invite them all to the fire. You are not just the voice in your head, you are the silence beneath it. You are not just what is seen, you are the dreamer, the myth, the depth that cannot be named. Individuation is not about self-improvement. It is self-remembrance. It is about becoming who you were before the world told you to be someone else. Jung knew this was no easy path. It requires grief for the masks you must let go. It requires courage to meet the stranger inside. And it requires love, the kind that says, "I will not abandon any part of me again." This journey is lifelong. There is no final destination, only layers peeled back, only truths reclaimed, only deeper union with the self, that timeless center within you that is untouched by fear, unmoved by performance, and utterly whole. And as you walk this path, something miraculous begins to happen. You stop needing to be liked. You start needing to be real. You stop chasing peace outside. You begin cultivating it within. You stop projecting your wounds. You start integrating your wisdom. This is the sacred paradox. The more of yourself you embrace, the more deeply connected you become to everything. The inner journey becomes the outer harmony. The more rooted you are in your truth, the more compassion you carry for others. You no longer see the world as a threat. You see it as a mirror, and you no longer fear the unknown, because you've made peace with the unknown inside yourself. This is individuation, not a straight path, but a spiral returning again and again to the self, each time deeper, each time more whole. The self, the God within. There is a center within you older than your name, deeper than your wounds, more eternal than your thoughts. Jung called it the self, not the ego, not the personality, but the divine spark, the wholeness that holds all opposites, the still point in a turning world. This self is not something you create. It is something you uncover. It is not shaped by status, success, or society. It is shaped by truth. It is the you that has always been hidden beneath the masks, whispering in dreams, waiting in silence. The self is the axis of your psyche, the source of your intuition, the compass that turns you inward when the world outside becomes too loud. Jung believed the self was not merely psychological, it was sacred. A divine image in the soul, a symbol of God within, not a God in the sky, but the inner light that guides you when all other lights go out, not a deity to worship, but a center to remember, and this remembering, this return to the self, is the essence of all true healing. It is why your soul longs, why your heart breaks open, why you feel lost so you can come home. The path is not easy. The ego resists, clings, defends. It would rather control than surrender, but the self does not shout. It beckons through dreams that unsettle, through synchronicities that awaken, through pain that purifies. The self sends messages not in words, but in symbols, a child, a circle, a wise figure, a mandala. It speaks the language of myth and metaphor, asking not for logic, but for listening. To meet the self is to kneel at the altar of your own soul, to realize that what you have been seeking outside belonging, purpose, power, peace was within you all along. Not in the ego's illusions, but in the self's stillness. Jung wrote, "The self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality. When you live from the self, you stop pretending. You stop performing, you begin to radiate something unmistakable, not arrogance, but authenticity, not dominance, but depth, and others feel it, because it is rare and real. You become a vessel not for ego, but for essence. You carry the light of consciousness into a world lost in shadow. You walk with reverence. You speak with clarity. You act with integrity, not because you are perfect, but because you are whole. The self is not an idea. It is a presence. It is who you were before the world told you who to be. It is the God within, and it has always been calling you home. Awakening, living as your true self, there comes a moment quiet but undeniable when something shifts within you. You can no longer pretend. You can no longer shrink to fit the old story. The life that once felt safe now feels suffocating. This is awakening, not the dramatic kind full of fireworks and fanfare, but the gentle kind, the unsettling kind, the sacred kind. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Awakening is when you stop calling it fate and start calling it choice. You begin to notice. You no longer chase approval. You begin to honor your truth. You say no without guilt. You say yes without fear. You feel more sensitive, but also more powerful. You grieve more deeply, but you also love more freely. You are no longer defined by the roles you've played, the achiever, the pleaser, the perfectionist. You are no longer hypnotized by the noise of the world, the endless scroll, the empty validation, the shallow success. You crave stillness. You seek depth. You hunger for what is real. These are signs you are returning to yourself. Awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about unbecoming what you are not, shedding what was never yours to carry, returning to the center, the soul you've always been. But the path is not without resistance. There will be days when you want to turn back, when the old life whispers its comforts, when people don't understand, when your growth threatens their comfort, when your truth makes them uncomfortable. Stay the course, because staying true to yourself means disappointing others but betraying no one, especially not the self. To walk the awakened path, practice stillness, Listen more than you speak. Trust what feels aligned, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's terrifying. Follow synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that feel like signs from the soul. They are real. They are guideposts. Honor your body not just as a vessel, but as a compass. The gut knows, the heart knows. Truth is not always loud, sometimes it's a quiet knowing. Surround yourself with those who nourish your spirit, not just your ego. Those who celebrate your becoming, not just your conformity. And when the path feels dark, remember, you are not lost. You are in the cocoon. Transformation is messy, but the butterfly never doubts the process. Awakening is not a destination. It is a rhythm, a constant homecoming. Again and again you choose the self, not because it's easy, but because it's true. You are not here to sleepwalk through life. You are here to awaken. To feel, to create, to live with eyes open, heart exposed and soul on fire. This is what it means to live as your true self. This is what it means to be free.